Broadcasting from Boston, Massachusetts, the Smart Cities podcast is the only podcast dedicated to all things smart cities. The podcast is the creation of ARC Advisory Group's Smart City practice. ARC advises leading companies, municipalities, and governments on technology trends and market dynamics that affect their business and quality of life in their cities. To engage further, please like and share our podcast or reach out directly on Twitter at Smart City Viewpoints or on our website at www.arcweb.com/industries/smart-cities.
Welcome to another episode of the Smart City Podcast. Today we're broadcasting live from Orlando, Florida at the 26th Annual ARC Forum. And on today's episode, we'll be talking about reliability with Terry O'Hanlon of Reliability Web. Terry, welcome to our podcast.
Hey,
today.
It's so great to be a guest here. I've been watching you really working this week and happy to have this conversation with you and your listeners.
It's great to have you. Well, let's just start with a foundational question. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to the reliability domain?
Yeah, I came kind of through condition monitoring. I was the CEO of a sensor company that sensed high frequency that would give you an early indication of when there was a machinery reliability issue. So that's one small part of reliability. And AT&T actually came to me in the early 90s and said, "Have you ever heard of the internet?" And I said, "Well, I've heard of it. It was maybe before Al Gore invented it." And they invited me down to a place called Bell Laboratories. I worked with the 10 engineers who became WorldNet Services and published one of the first 5,000 commercial websites on the internet. And so I was kind of an early adopter to HTML1. In fact, we use a product called Vermeer Front Page, which became, really Microsoft's premier product. So was an early adopter of web and really understood the power of giving information directly to the readers. I mean, prior to that, all the reliability information was really locked up with consultants and technology companies. And all of a sudden, we were sort of turning the industry on its head because we were providing information. At that time, there was no revenue on the web. So, the whole idea was to get audience. And that's what we did. We took off and got audience. So then, at that point in time, I guess I'll tell you one more thing is that John Mulberry, one of the gentlemen who brought reliability center maintenance out of the airline industry to regular industry, had something called detective maintenance, where you were using these instruments to determine if there was any problems. I love Sherlock Holmes. So as soon as he said detective maintenance, I'm like, I am in. And it turned out to be reliability. And I started to learn the breadth and the depth of reliability. As a sensor manufacturer, for me, everything was sensor. Sensor was the answer for everything. But once I started to get exposed to the wider world of reliability, I fell in love. I mean, I'm passionate. I wake up thinking about reliability. I go to bed thinking about reliability. I don't dream about it. I do take the night off. But otherwise, if you see me, I'm thinking about reliability.
Well, Terry, we've had some energetic guests so far on the podcast this week, but you already get the award, okay, for energy. So how does that? So we get the genesis of you, sensors, reliability, your passion for it. That internet story is amazing. I had a copy of Vermeer Front Page way back when. But how does that evolution evolve to then include your creation of Reliability Web?
Well, so after the experience with AT&T, went on to start publishing Reliability Web. Online magazine, sort of, but the magazines that were in the industrial space at that time, very few of them are around now, cute at .com, what a cute little thing that was, and they all wanted to associate. So I ended up writing for a lot of the industry trade magazines. I eventually started a magazine. It failed. I then acquired a magazine. It failed. And then I went ahead and started a third magazine. I guess I was a glutton for punishment, called Uptime Magazine. It's well loved. In fact, a lot of people are not thinking so well of me because during the pandemic, if you remember, there's a little problem with the post office going on. And then not only that, we didn't know who was at work and who wasn't at work. We didn't have everybody's home address. So we stopped publishing print Same time, sustainability, ESG. We started thinking, wow, and our traffic started going up, and we made our website better, made it easier to access. So we have converted to basically 100% online now.
Great. Reliability. That's an ambiguous word, prone to many different definitions. Before we go into any verticals or details of reliability, let me just ask that question. What do you consider reliability to be scoped?
Well, there's a technical definition when it comes to assets, that the asset will meet its required function over a particular period of time under stated conditions. I hate that. I hate that definition. No,
you and I spoke before we started here, and I know you've got a very broad definition that includes many different things.
Right.
So expand and include.
It's because there's the reliability of the pump and the motor. Then there's the reliability of the system that the pump and the motor's in, and then there's sort of the reliability of the organization, and then there's the reliability of the humans that are in the organization. So, and that's just in our small part of the world. You're right. There's all kinds of other areas that they apply reliability to. We have sort of drifted up to the system or organizational reliability, and we include the human as at least a 50% part of reliability. So what we say is that it works. Our simple definition of reliability is it works. You could say it works as expected. You could say it's failure-free operation, but most people don't understand failure, so then you have to go define failure.
Okay, so before we started today, you talked about how your magazine has a rolling 6 weeks media calendar, editorial calendar on different subjects, and you focus on a particular subject for 6 weeks and then you move on. What are some of those subjects?
Well, they're based on a framework that I created. You hear the name sometimes because of the COVID medicines that are going around, but I got a thing called Guillain-Barré in 2010. It's a neurological, and what your antibodies eat the myelin sheath off of your nerves, and I was paralyzed for 8 months. I was on my back. I haven't not worked since I was about 14 years old. And so I was on my back for 18 months, I guess, meditating and pondering reliability. And as I came back, I was in one of my son's parent-teacher association meetings. I look up on the wall, there's Mendeloff's elements chart. I'm saying, I've been looking for a way to organize reliability. So I organized reliability into uptime elements, and it's got 36 different elements across 5 different domains, and then across the asset life cycle. And I was doing it to organize our publishing. I was doing it. We also produce conferences. But what happened is it's been adopted now by 6,000 companies. There's 4,000 certified practitioners, and it is it's two things. It's a strategy and it's a language. And it really stays high level. It stays on what and why, and it's not prescriptive as to how to. So all the many engineering methods and specialties and technologies that are out there, it all fits underneath the what and the why, if that makes any sense. So like reliability engineering for maintenance. That's where you're trying to figure out which assets in this system are the ones that if it shuts down, we're all going home for the day, or worse. And then what are the ways these assets can fail? Can we anticipate that in advance? Asset condition management's using the sensors, just like a doctor trends you over time. They take your blood test, they listen to your pulse, they're using all kinds of non-invasive sensors to find out, to trend your health over time. Then there's work execution management. You're paying a lot of people to go out and run all around the plant. And so you have to do that in a very efficient way, and that's what a lot of the software companies here specialize in. In the beginning, we thought, that's been around for about 40 years, and about 70% of those programs fail to generate sustainable business success. So we thought, here's the key: reliability leadership. So we created a foundational reliability leadership framework that has integrity, authenticity, responsibility, and aim, working for an aim that's bigger than oneself. And we thought that's all we need to really get reliability to sustain. Wasn't so. And we'll stop. I've got one more thing. Okay, and then we'll circle back around. So then what really skyrocketed it was We put a coordinating layer on because what we started to realize is reliability is not just maintenance. We need operations. We need HR. We need engineering. We need safety. We need the top management. So we need everybody. Just like if you walked into a plant, everybody would be responsible for safety. Everyone's responsible for reliability.
So on behalf of all our listeners, let me just start with, to give them, to illustrate your framework. We don't want to go into the 60 objects that you had there, but how about, you said a lot there, but what are those 6 domains? Or at least give us a flavor of what 1, 2, 3 of them might
That's what
be.
I just did. That's reliability engineering for maintenance, asset condition management.
Okay, then let's go next into, you mentioned certification.
Yeah.
Sitting here with you, I understand you're an online magazine about reliability. It has a 6-week rolling editorial schedule. What is this certification? What body is it? Who does it? Okay. How does it all work?
There's a not-for-profit association called the Association of Asset Management Professionals, or AMP as I call it. I love acronyms. And they do what's called a Certified Reliability Leader, CRL. And it's based on the body of knowledge that's around this Uptime Elements framework that I created.
Okay, so you originated this framework.
Yes.
Brought it to them.
Yes.
And they built a certification program around it.
Because ISO 17024, sorry, getting a little geeky here, but they have a certification sort of schema that says if you're training, you shouldn't be providing certification, because if you were a big enough client, you'd say, hey, Terrence, I'm sending 100 of my guys, I want them all to pass, and I'd say, wow, I want 100 students. So, they kind of separate the benefit, the monetary benefit of certification from the training. So the not-for-profit accepted it, and they've got a whole management system for certification, which I don't have.
So I think our audience, and certainly the population here at the ARC Forum, understands the measurement of reliability, quality issues, and standard deviations, and all that mathematical number crunching. But I was intrigued that your umbrella of reliability includes much softer human skill type things. You mentioned a few of them, and you went so fast. I don't have all of them, but let's start with one that is near and dear to my heart, which is authenticity. So you have the floor about authenticity.
So what we call authenticity is being who you allow the world to think you are. So you represent yourself in the world, and you say, okay, if you know me for a while, say respect is very important to me, and friendship and loyalty is very, those are my 3 top values. But if you saw me acting inconsistent with those values, in other words, if I told you, hey, the most important thing in my life is respect, but I treat other people disrespectfully, that's not authentic. That's not, at least not, so my authentic self would then be disrespectful, not respectful. So I'm putting myself out there as if I'm a respectful person, but now I'm acting disrespectful. I'm using that as an example. Oftentimes the values that we sort of let others believe we hold dear, we might violate them. We're humans. We were born into this condition called human being, and humans will violate authenticity, as they will sometimes violate integrity. And so we decided that makes the workplace less effective when that happens. So listen, we have to first acknowledge one thing about authenticity is that we're all inauthentic as well. So we need a way to deal with that. So when I'm inconsistent with the values that I say I have, I need to clean up that mess. I need to say, listen, respect is really important to me. And I apologize that I was disrespectful to you in the way that I spoke to you or in the way that I dealt with you. I understand that was disrespectful. That's not who I am. And I'd like to clean up the mess. Is there anything I can do to make it up to you that I was disrespectful in my behavior? So in other words, you're trying to fill up the bucket of your values again, restore your values. We're always going to kind of be, it's like a bank account. It's going to go up, it's going to go down. And you want to make more deposits than you want to make withdrawals.
That's a great concept, and I get the empathy and the human, human factors of all of that. But for some of us in the audience, they may be wondering and scratching their heads about
what's that got to do with
what
reliability?
What does that have to do exactly with reliability?
It's effectiveness. It's effectiveness in the workplace. The first one is integrity, and the way we define that, we don't put that in the moral and ethical framework of honesty and that, because that's a slippery slope and that's a real gray area. So we simplified the definition of integrity to say, do what you say you're going to do, and when you don't, because there'll be times when you won't, you either can't or you won't, clean up the mess you made. And so with authenticity, with integrity, when you restore it more often than you violate it, the workplace is a lot more effective. That's what it turns out to be. It turns out there's a lot of, when somebody sees you being inconsistent with your values, somebody sees you breaking your word or experiences you breaking your word a lot, it's really hard to get reliability. In fact, one definitely, when you started by saying, hey, reliability's got all these, you could say reliability is your word. And so if you violate your word often, it's going to be very difficult to achieve reliability as an organization or reliability as a system. You have to be consistent.
So that authenticity, does it only apply to the actual human being in the organization? Or is it, does it apply to actual engineered systems, devices, other things?
Well, I would say integrity certainly could. Authenticity also could. It's a great question. I would say yes, it does, but that's not the intention.
That's a bit of a
that's not the intention of the way we use it. But now you've given me a whole new. So one of the ways I work is called inquiry. I love questions. That's why I'm loving doing this with you. I love questions so much better than I like answers. Because when you start with an answer, only the things that match that answer are possible for you. When you start with a question, you have what we call unlimited opportunity sets. Because it's anything. I mean, as a question, it's anything. It's only when you start narrowing it down to limited possibilities that, you're narrowing down your options. So you gave me a new inquiry, which I'm going to stand in to say, Terry, with what you're dealing with integrity and authenticity, does that apply to the system reliability?
You can come back on the next episode.
I will do that. I'll be honest with you. I had not really thought about it in that context.
What you've had me think about over the last 5 or 10 minutes is that authenticity. People have an intuition and they have their authenticity detector.
Yes, I like that.
And many of us, whether it be human, the perceived values of a human, your perception of a human, or your perception of a product in the market, you look at it and intuit the authenticity. And you might in these days of inflation, when boxes of cornflakes are shrinking, you might go pick up that box of cornflakes and you know what? Last week it was this big. This week it's not that big.
I love it.
And you guess what? There's something
wrong.
That
Out of whack here. It's out of whack.
The universe is not in alignment here. So I can see that. So how long? Let's go back to reliability.
Okay.
You've got a 6-week rotating, media calendar.
Yeah, my memory's okay so far. So I'm going to say we started the year with specify for reliability. In other words, when you're replacing assets, when you're going to get a new asset, do you take reliability into consideration and specify the reliability level at that point in time? And then verify that all of the stakeholders, the engineers, the operators, purchasing, are aware of that specification, understand that specification, agree with that specification. We'll make sure they include that specification. So we spent 6 weeks with a group of companies developing a 10-step process for specify for reliability. We had a lot of people writing articles about it. We had some webinars about it. We actually even ran a small cohort of companies just to explore what current practices are with specify for reliability. And we couldn't find any written practices about it. So we developed some written practices around it in a 6-week period.
That's interesting. I mean, one of my typical questions, frequent listeners will know is, what are the obstacles? What are the challenges in this marketplace? So, I mean, you answered some of it, but you might want to look at that little different perspective. What are the challenges to reliability?
Well, the first challenge I would tell you is language. Because it's just like you and I. We could talk all day long about 27 different contexts of reliability. The reliability of the news, the reliability of the Ford vehicles, which are highly reliable. So lots of different contexts of reliability. What we find inside an organization is that they're using different words for the same thing. So we just have experienced it this morning. We're doing what's called reliability strategy development in this 6 weeks. So off these engineers went talking about, here's how you do it, here's how you do it, here's how you do it. I said, do you think we could stop, because there's people on this project that have no idea what even the term reliability strategy means. Could we start with what is it and why do we need it?
Do you have agreement on that?
We did. We got everybody was like, we missed that, and they were loving it. They loved it.
It's that aha moment.
Yeah, exactly.
What's interesting, what you bring up there, is that, we all know in the automation world, we have a lot of discussion about semantic models, interoperability, APIs, with the idea that there's a much more reliable, lower latency transfer of information from one place to another. And yet, in the human world, we too are limited by our definitions. And we might even both speak English, but you know what? We just don't agree on what the definition of a term might be. Or we might be 10% off.
And don't, listen, I don't want the world to think, hey, you must use Terrence O'Hanlon's definitions. From this framework, though, what happens is when we put it into a Fortune 500 company, and it's in use by about 6,000 of them, even the disagreement can be calibrated. So if you don't agree with my definition of A, B, or C, that's fine. But we're going to freeze these definitions in time, and what we can do is calibrate our disagreement. At least we have a still point to calibrate our disagreement.
I'm a veteran of the standards world, and typically no one has a perfect view. Everyone is subjective. And typically, as you know, what happens there is you get a consensus-based if you get consensus around something, a definition in this case, okay, that's what we go with.
That's right.
Might not be perfect, but at least it's something that most people can then interoperate.
Well, it's very interesting you say that, because a lot of this came from, I had joined ISO, and I helped write the ISO 55000 asset management standards. And a lot of that was debate. 3 years, actually, it's a very, very profound conversation. 3 years to define what is asset management. The standards was easy. Once we got the definition of what asset management was, it was easy to do the standard. But we spent 3 years on weekly meetings discussing what is asset, and everybody had an idea. Everybody had an opinion.
Absolutely. I mean, I had the same experience with, I've done a lot of work with the interoperable intelligent transportation system standards for the US. And by far the hardest part was what our user needs, can we build consensus around them, building the consensus, and then refining them into the actual definition, the functional requirement that says volts is 0 to 100 with a granularity of 10 millivolts or something, and the range is 0 to all of that. That by far was the hardest part. Once you get that, you can build all your applications very quickly.
Well, and then one of the other things, and I even saw it in the breakfast session this morning, for some reason, maintenance and reliability, they went to the company Christmas party, and somebody had spiked the punch bowl, and they had way too much to drink, and they went home together. And then they stayed together for the next 20 years, when they should have probably just gone home the next day, each one of them to their homes. And they call it maintenance and reliability. Well, if you're waiting until the maintenance phase of an asset to figure out the reliability, you're in you may not be in big trouble, but it's going to cost you about times 10 or times 100 at that point in time. You need to figure out the reliability early. Reliability. So I'm sorry if I'm breaking anybody's heart out there, but reliability and maintenance need a divorce. Okay, maintenance is great. I love maintenance. Please do not get me wrong, but we want reliability early, way before maintenance is even considered. So we want reliability in every aspect of the asset life cycle.
It's fascinating to me that there are some network software platform providers out there that monitor equipment that that do not operate to the most highest performance levels, but they index it off of the manufacturer's stated 100% operation levels. So in say a building automation case, you might have Zigbee sensors on the bearings of a pump motor, and if they exceed, or if they start creeping up by even the smallest amount, you know that there's extra current going to the motor, your electric bill is going up, and if you don't touch it soon enough, something bad is going to happen. So you could actually extrapolate, this is predictively, what should I do and what is that motor costing me, even though the temperature on the bearing has only gone up by 0.5 degree. So that is not maintenance.
That's right. That's not maintenance. Sort of, you're opening up a lot to unpack there. But I would just say a couple of things about that. One is, there's a difference if the pump is being operated in Alaska and it's, minus 30 and it's pumping crude oil 8 hours a day. Whereas the pump could be in Arizona, it's running 24 hours a day and it's pumping water. It's an operating context. So that using the manufacturer's specification oftentimes isn't, you need to do your own engineering just to validate that the operating envelope or that the warning signs are operating context appropriate. That's one.
Well, you're bringing me, I would argue that manufacturer stated this is how it should perform is the baseline you work off of.
Yes.
Your
would
cost
agree.
accounting, if your downtime at a refinery is different than downtime at a water fountain in a school, it's different.
Yeah. So I agree with you. I think starting from that point, but if you live at that point, you're going to find you're either doing too much maintenance or you're not doing enough maintenance. Because you have to really take it into account for your own operational context. The other thing is this predictability. So I like that. That word's fine with me. I have no real issue with predictability. The word I have an issue with is predictive maintenance. A lot of these companies, because they're dealing with data, that's the hot IoT application. Predictive maintenance for me it's an end-of-life asset management activity. First off, there's no such thing as predictive maintenance. It's condition monitoring. I don't need a sensor to predict maintenance. I can look and see you didn't align the pump. I can look and see you're putting dirty lubrication in. I can predict the maintenance just from watching your practices. I'm not diminishing condition monitoring. I'm diminishing the word predictive maintenance. It was originally a marketing term that has now since entered engineering lexicon, and it bothers me. So I just want to get that out. But I also view it as an end-of-life asset management strategy. Listen, just for a second. In the beginning, you're going to spend money, a little extra money, to make sure that asset or that system has inherent reliability, has inherent availability to it. Then you're going to commission it. From that time that you commission it, you want to run as long as possible in a steady state. You do not want abnormal. You don't want startup. You don't want shutdown. You don't want emergency work. That's called the money-making period. That's the time we're making money. As soon as I've got a temperature sensor or a vibration sensor telling me that I've got to do something with that bearing, guess what we're back to? The spending money phase. So with precision, with good engineering, good procurement, good design, good specifications, good commissioning, we can make that trouble-free period of installation to the first point that temperature starts to go up. That's the game. Extend that period, because that's where you're making money. Don't try to extend the last part of the asset's life, unless you need to. I'm being broad in general, but most people lose the fact that if they put more attention to extending that I to P, the installation to potential failure period, they would make a lot more money.
You point out the importance of cost accounting. Correct cost accounting.
Well, and very few people in the maintenance industry understand cost accounting.
Indeed. Well, Terry, this has been a fascinating quick run through the world of reliability. Certainly. We're nearing the end of our time, so are there any last messages you'd like to deliver to our listening audience?
Well, it depends on where they are. If they're not really, if they really haven't started their reliability journey, start. And remember, everybody's responsibility is reliability. Think about it more in the context of safety than in the context of maintenance, and get started with it. If you're more mature, very lucky, because we are in the era of connected data and visualization. We've got great engineering around assets because we've been making as good as decisions as we can without data for the last couple of decades. All of a sudden, when I'm here at the ARC advisory forum, and this is filled with companies who make it easy to connect data, to get access to, no matter where they are, no matter what kind of systems they're in, and bring them forward to you and put them in context so we can make so much more better decisions as a result of it. I am so excited about that. That's why if you're not started, get started, so when this technology knocks on your door, you're ready to take advantage of the incredible benefits that it offers.
Well, Terry, thanks again for joining us. If any of our listeners are interested in contacting you, can you share your contact information, please?
Reliability Web. If you're in LinkedIn, you will see me all over. It's Terrence O'Hanlon at LinkedIn. I use my mother and father love Terrence. TerrenceOhanlon. Find me at LinkedIn. I'm always there, and I'm posting all kinds of stuff if you want to follow what's going on there.
Well, once again, Terry, thank you very much for joining us today. This has been a jam-packed reliability session here on the Smart City Podcast. To our listeners out there, please join us again on the next edition of the Smart City Podcast.
Broadcasting from Boston, Massachusetts, the Smart Cities Podcast is the only podcast dedicated to all things smart cities. The podcast is the creation of ARC Advisory Group's Smart City practice. ARC advises leading companies, municipalities, and governments on technology trends and market dynamics that affect their business and quality of life in their cities. To engage further, please like and share our podcast or reach out directly on Twitter at Smart City Viewpoints or on our website at www.arcweb.com/industries/smart-cities.